But can you speak more about what is the exposome effect?
The exposome is those influences from the outside that aren't our genes, that aren't an internal code, that have a direct impact on how we experience life and our health, and ultimately our longevity and our health span. The group who had the soil intervention had a much better response, had the immune system was able to create more antibodies, and essentially had more success to protect themselves against pneumococcal infection from just rubbing their hands with soil 3 times a day. When you put these on your body, they have an effect. Now, most worryingly, they could have endocrine-disrupting effects. So EDCs are endocrine-disrupting chemicals. And we really want to reduce the exposure to those. It's the cocktail effect of these xenobiotics. That's what we think is having such a detrimental impact, certainly on the gut microbiome, on gut health, but also more widely on population's health.
How do women prevent from putting a lot of chemicals, especially very close to their nose, their mouth, their eyes, which are very, I feel, absorbent? Welcome to the Intelligent Change podcast, Federica. It's so good to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. It's really super great to be here.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to be out here and outdoors in London, to be in the, just outside, not inside.
When I came here and I saw the setup, I was like, yes, Alex, this is such a good idea to be outside in nature, fresh air, actual daylight. I am thrilled. It made me even more glad to be here.
Yeah, and I'll love to kick it off with, the latest book that you wrote about the exposome effect.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was until I started researching more about you. And it kind of ties in also with us being outside and in the elements and how really everything around us shapes our health. So can you speak more about what is the exposome effect?
Yeah, so the exposome is a term that's used in science to refer to all of the external factors that influence our health. So if you think of your genome as your genetic material that codes for a lot of the health risks that we end up having, and also a lot of our characteristics, blue eyes, height, all these things. The exposome is those influences from the outside that aren't our genes, that aren't an internal code, that have a direct impact on how we experience life and our health, and ultimately our longevity and our health span. So how well we can live in those years. So I have been interested in this, since I started in public health 15 years ago, because when you study public health, you learn about all the different factors that influence health and how they come together. So it's been in my mind for a very long time. I've wanted to write this book for a very long time, but it never felt like it was quite the right moment to do it. And now I think finally, I feel like there's a lot more awareness about the influence that these external factors have on our health. And people are becoming more and more aware of different factors. So of course, most of my work and teaching is in nutrition, and we are so much more aware about how important food is for our health now than we were even 5 years ago. And now what I'm seeing is this real shift in focus to what about the water we're drinking? What about the air we're breathing? What about our exposure to daylight? Is sunlight good for us or bad for us? And so it just felt like this is the right moment for this book now, because you can have an idea for a book in your head for a while, but it doesn't feel like the right time for it to go into the world. And I think this is it. So I think this is the time for the exposome, and I'm super excited. It's really a big chat. It's a big topic.
Let's talk about it. That's why we're here.
It's my last book, everybody should know this, was again a really big topic. It was nutrition throughout the entire life course. So I think maybe this is just what I like to do. I like to take big chunky topics and make them really practical. And so the way I've thought about breaking this up, how can we make something as vast as the exposome, which covers environmental exposures, it covers societal exposures, so how you experience society, how you socially function, and it also covers exposures that are related to essentially your home and how you live. How do you break that down into a book? So I've approached this through the 5 senses. So to try and make it really practical. So for example, when you think about what you put on your skin, or when you think about what does different temperature exposure do to your health, or when you think about, okay, sunlight exposure to your eye, how does that help train your circadian rhythm and basically dictate how well you adapt to daylight hours, nighttime hours? So that's how I've done it, through the senses, the 5 senses, and of course the 6th sense, interoception. So how we experience our bodies actually influences its health. And that's something I'm super interested in. Of course, there's lots of research around all of them. Uh, and and yeah, I think what I'm most looking forward to is seeing how the practical advice can really influence people's behavior with a topic that it can seem really scary when you first start looking at it, because it feels like, oh my gosh, everything is potentially a risk, right? It's like, okay, like the water I'm drinking, oh my gosh, okay, the furniture in my home, or like the hand wash I'm choosing to put in my bathroom. But actually the book is not about, it's not about fear at all. It's about, okay, let's weigh up how important each of these factors is. Like on a scale of 1 to 100, how worried should you be about, I'll give you one example. So a lot of people worry about Teflon pans and using non-stick cookware. In the grand scheme of things, like how much of an impact will cooking, say, 2 meals a week have on, if you cook it in Teflon pans? It's actually quite small compared to some of the other exposures. So it's about balancing it all out and then having really practical tips that can transform your health and the way you tackle these risks, so you feel empowered and actually, oh, you can do stuff about like the majority of these things. So it's actually a hopeful thing, a hopeful book, lots of practical advice, and tackling something that can seem quite overwhelming at first. It did to me when I first started doing research in this space about 8 years ago. I was like, whoa. But there's more and more research coming out actually on how we can help modify some of these exposures, and it's really exciting.
So someone that has OCD shouldn't read this book. They'll be like a whole
Well,
manual.
I hope it's a good question, but I hope to bring things to light in a way that they're informative, not fear mongering, and then practically like changeable, essentially. So there's going to be different levels of change that people can engage with. So, you know, to give you a practical example, like we know that the air in our homes is super important for our health. Ideally, you live near a green space. That like massively helps for you to have access to fresh, clean air really close to your home. When you open your windows and ventilate your home, you're already improving air quality. For those who can't live near a green space, there's other things to do. So, okay, you might not live near a green space, but still ventilating your home is important. And actually, are you able to get some air filters in your home if needed? Or can you make sure that you buy a vacuum cleaner that has a HEPA filter in it, which is more affordable than buying a full air purifier? So there's loads of different things you can do. Some of them are completely free. Buying like really nice plants for your home that can purify your air actually works. So there's lots of things, and we can tackle them like as much as we want. You might decide to move home. We did that when we had our first daughter. We moved from central London to closer to a forest so that we could actually have cleaner air near us. Or you might be like, no, I'm not moving, but I will do these other things. Yeah.
Would you be able to walk us through your book in regards to the actual senses?
Yeah.
And because I would love for people to get that practical advice from you in terms of those based on each
Okay,
sense.
let's pick one for each then. Okay, so if we start with your eyes, okay, so eyesight, it's the eyes have loads of amazing roles, and some people have different levels of eyesight, eye impairment. So this is not just about how clearly you can see. We do know there's some nice evidence around the colors that we're exposed to and how they can influence our mood. But the strongest evidence we have for the role of the eye in terms of metabolic health is definitely light exposure and how that helps entrain our circadian rhythm. So what that means is the way that the light hits the back of our eyeball literally gives messages to our bodies to let the other clocks in our organs know what time it is. And these cells are completely separate to the cells that see color or see light. So they're sensitive to blue light, red light, they're sensitive to changes in those mostly blue light is the one that plays a pivotal role. And so as the amount of blue light changes in our environment, it gives our body the signal of what time of day it is. Now, this is really important for loads of factors. So the first one, if we to look at metabolism, right? Our circadian rhythm is entrained to then be ready to absorb food, break nutrients down, and make the most of them from the morning. So actually, our insulin levels rise in the morning, regardless of whether we're eating or not, in preparation for maximally absorbing nutrients from the first meal of the day. And that's part of circadian rhythm entrainment. So what we see is people who have very little exposure to daylight, especially in the morning and later in the evening. So you can imagine, like, first thing in the morning, you have maximum blue light, and late at night, you have minimum. So that is this major signal to our circadian clock to say, okay, this is morning time, this is evening time. If you don't have exposure to daylight first thing in the morning, that body is not getting a signal of what time it is. So now, obviously, we live in London, Alex, and there is like, this is when the days get shorter. And we'll soon, when we wake up in the morning, it's going to be dark. So our bodies are not going to get that input of daylight close to when we wake up. And that can actually make us feel sleepier. It can make our sort of energy levels a bit different. Now, that's not something to worry about health-wise, but what we see in more severe cases, such as people who have night shift work, so actually they very rarely see the daylight exposure that relates to their activity levels, then you start to see that groups of people who have night shift work for long periods of time have worse metabolic health outcomes. And so it's because of the effect it has on the liver and how the liver then plays a role in metabolism, hormone regulation. The gut, same. So like how the gut can function, whether it can remove inflammatory pathways. So during nighttime, when we usually sleep, our gut goes into repair mode. It repairs the mucin layer, which is like, it's disgusting. It's like the snot layer of your gut, but it protects your gut lining and stops any unwanted proteins and food matter going into and across the gut lining layer. So it reduces your risk of inflammation. And inflammation plays an incredibly pivotal role for all chronic diseases. So when we think about some of the imbalances that happen when there isn't a correct circadian rhythm, a lot of it does then lead to inflammation on one of the pathways. So there's the liver, there's the gut, there's your heart as well. So your heart rate, your blood pressure, they all change depending on what time of day it is. So when you're supposed to be asleep, they go down, your heart rate drops, your blood pressure drops. And then as you're about to wake up, before you wake up, they start going up thanks to the body clocks. So you can imagine that if you have night shift work, this is all sort of backwards. And over time, your body isn't able to really catch up with what time it's supposed to be. So we are really animals that have evolved to receive this light cue from the outside world and adapt to the day-night rhythm. The most extreme examples of testing this in humans is the cave experiments, where they essentially have put people in a completely dark cave where there's absolutely no light for several weeks. And interestingly, despite the fact that there was absolutely no light cue at all in these caves, the circadian rhythm remained. So people were still going to sleep roughly at the same time and waking up roughly at the same time, sleeping for the same amount of time. But it just slightly shifted from day to day. So like it was a bit off, but the other circadian clocks in our organs meant that we kind of more or less maintain the same 24-hour clock, which is really super interesting when you think about it. So there's this dual role of light when it hits our eyes. It really helps the circadian rhythm entrainment. It helps to regulate the rest of our body clocks. The good news is that we do have a really solid internal body clock that even if we don't get the ideal exposure every day, will still continue, even if you live in a cave, which most people
Yeah,
don't
well, in
now.
London, it can feel like that in the winter sometimes.
Yeah.
And in terms of the practical tips that someone can do
Yeah.
with this sense, for example, for me, we're sitting in my garden here in London.
Yeah.
What I try to do on most days, even when it's cold, first thing in the morning, get out here in the garden, I do my morning ritual routine, and I'm here out even if it's cloudy, looking up the sky, doing my yoga, sun salutations, being barefoot. And obviously not a lot of people have that luxury as well of having a garden or a forest to go to. So practically, what can someone do to expose themselves
Yeah.
to kind of set that?
So this is a great question. And you don't have to have a beautiful garden or a forest to do anything. Actually, if you just have your morning coffee or your first glass of water within half an hour of waking, if you can just sit by a window, but really, really right by it, because as soon as you start moving away, the lux levels start to go down. So you need to be right by it. If you sit right by a window for like 10, 15, 20 minutes and just let that natural, really look at the light. Now, if it's really sunny, please don't harm your eyes by looking directly at the sun, but just really let that natural light hit your face, basically. That is enough to really get a good start. So just being near a window, just opening your curtains, opening your blinds. Now, if it's deep darkest winter and you're waking up at 6 a.m. and it is dark, there are actually some really good lamps on the market that recreate the same lux level and blue light exposure as sunlight
How
or
about
daylight.
scrolling on your phone? Does
Yeah,
that
not that. That
like a lot of
doesn't
people
work.
do that. They wake up and they're
I
like,
know. Yeah, so it's like
some blue light.
best not to do that. That's not quite what we want it to be slightly different to that. But yeah, so you can buy, there's different brands out there that sell lamps, and you can, again, I have one in my home. I switch it on in the morning when I come downstairs if it's still dark, put it on, prepare breakfast for the kids, make coffee, and it's just that it's very bright. You're just like, and it just really helps. So those are some really practical tips you can do. The other thing is later in the evening, if you're at home and it's getting closer to bedtime, try to recreate a dimmer lit
I
environment.
love
So
dim lights.
yeah,
They're
dim lights.
romantic, sets the mood. It's
Exactly.
perfect. No
Dim the
blue
light.
screens.
My husband, he hates it. He's like, "Why are you turning the lights on?" I'm like, "Because it's evening."
Yeah.
So turn the lights down. Try not to stare at a screen or look at a screen for at least an hour to 2 hours before bed. That really helps to send the signal to the brain that it's nighttime. Now, I think this is one bit where the evidence has sometimes been conflated. Like your iPhone or your phone, the blue light on your devices is not going to completely disrupt your circadian rhythm. That has been overstated. There's quite good evidence to suggest that actually it doesn't have a huge impact. What does have an impact is what you're watching. So if it's a really stressful thriller or a murder mystery or something, or the news, that's super stressful. And actually it's just the content is going to keep you awake because it's not a relaxing piece of content. But the light itself doesn't have as much of a disruptive effect as people think. So
Well, unless you have a 50-inch screen or something like that. I
if
don't
you've
know.
got a 50-inch screen and
And
you've got it on maximum brightness, but actually, so a lot of the blue light blocking glass, it's really they don't have a clinically meaningful effect
Oh, wow.
on health.
You just crushed a lot of
From
companies at the
I'm really
moment.
sorry. With the current science, there's not that much. Now, what I always say with these things is if you have them and you feel like they're helping you, then crack on. But in terms of with the science we have right now, they don't seem to have a major effect.
Yeah, well, placebo effect is real.
It's real. Yeah, placebo effect is really real and very powerful. And if we could put it in a pill, it would sell very well. So, yeah.
So moving on to the next sense.
Okay, should we move on to the nose then? We've talked a little bit about the air biome. It's the air biome is fascinating and super exciting. So when we think about the air biome, I like to think about the outside air biome and then the home biome. So the outside air biome really depends on where you live, what city you live in, what does your daily routine look like. That might be taking the tube. Not very good air biome.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unfortunately. So when a lot of people think of air as being pretty inert and lifeless, but it's filled with bacteria, viruses, spores, fungi. There are living organisms floating in the air around us all the time. But there's also particulate matter, so different levels of soot, different things from the pollution from cars, lots of different little particles at different sizes all around us. So our air is actually super alive. What's really interesting in a place like this, where we are now, at the moment we're breathing in biome from the soil, from the leaves, from the trees, the birds that you can hear. But that's part of the air biome together with the cars, the buses,
Yeah, we got some of that too.
people. We have all of that, right? So you can imagine there's so much happening with every breath you take. You're not just getting oxygen and some other gases, you're getting a whole variety of particles and live things. So when you start to think that way, you think, oh gosh, okay, so what am I inhaling right now? And taking the tube as an example, we know that, for example, the tube has a really high amount of course, microbes, skin from passengers, from seats,
Skin.
skin,
Okay.
just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Flakes.
flakes. Yeah, seriously, it's gross, but it's true. Viruses, and then we also have quite a lot of so actually metal particles from the brakes and the rails. So some studies have likened taking the tube to smoking cigarettes in terms of how much pollution you're exposed to. It's not quite the same, but it gives you an idea of just how much is present in that air, right?
Wow.
So when we think about exposures to natural environments, there's so much data that shows us that in early life, if babies or toddlers, young children are exposed to natural environments, whether it's a park, a forest, it can be any sort of green space, they have a better immune system and they tend to have less sort of atopic dermatitis, eczema. So why is that? Like this exposure to the air biome that they're breathing when they're, so if you've got a baby and you're sort of showing it the leaves, this is without even direct contact with dirt. It's just the exposure to the environment changes how their body learns about the world. Now compare that to a child who perhaps doesn't have access to a green space and they have grown up in a flat, in an inner city flat, a new build, really hermetically sealed. The air biome in an apartment like that, right, is mostly made up of skin again, but then plastics, PFAS, and other forever chemicals that are found on the coverings of the furniture. And that child has a completely different exposure to what a normal air biome is. And it's the children in these households that have a much higher risk of allergies, atopic dermatitis, eczema. And you see this in population studies where we compare children raised in natural environments or farms. Farms are like the ultimate. Like if children grow up on farms, the rate of allergies is basically non-existent compared to children raised in a city. So you've got this external air biome. Where do you live? How much pollution is there where you live? It's really worth people starting to be more curious about that. You can look at pollution indices online and find out for free.
Yeah.
Like how
On your
much,
iPhone or in your
just on
phone, they have a
on
weather app.
yeah,
It shows a lot of
exactly
times.
that as well. So like again, if you live somewhere that's got really high pollution, could think about how you spend most of your days. Could you go to somewhere that has lower pollution, maybe during the day when you're working, or how can you organize yourself around that? Or if you are going to move, when you're looking at a new place to move to, find out about the pollution levels on that street, because you get quite a big variation from like street to street. It's quite amazing when you look at it on the heat maps. So that's worth knowing about. Then when we go inside the home, I've just given the example of the flat. It's the same thing. Now, what's really cool about the home biome is that your home with the people who live in it with you, it has a specific signature. So the home biome signature stays the same regardless of which home you move to. So in our home with myself, Paul, the two children, and the dog, we have a very specific home biome signature. If we were to move next month, that home biome signature would move with us to our new home. And it's all the bacteria, the viruses, the different fungi that our skin that actually creates its own home biome. And then on top of that, you have the pollutants. So you have cooking. If you do a lot of cooking, good idea to ventilate. If you have pets, that changes the biome. The plants that we have in our home, we do have a garden, so like we ventilate the home every day, and that then changes the home biome too. So there's these really interesting ways that you can think about the air we breathe is actually an extension of the environment that we live in, and it surrounds us all the time, and it's super important. So the practical tips for the home biome especially are ventilation. Like it sounds really simple, but remember to open your windows every day and for a good period of time, like just really let the air flow through
Yeah.
and change the air. Like, there's like saying, in Italian we say cambiare l'aria, like just change the air, really important. And then the other things are to not add chemicals to your home environment that you don't want to be breathing in. When I say this, I mean things like aerosols, plug-in fresheners, sprays, like sprays to try and deodorize your home. And when you're spraying your surfaces, if you're cleaning, try to use cleaning products that have less irritants in them. So a lot of household cleaning products, when you look on the pack, they'll have hazard signs essentially. It's a better idea to use something that's more natural. Where possible, use a microfiber cloth and water, or use bicarb, use vinegar, like use products that when sprayed in the air, they're not going to be harmful. So really think about that as well, because a lot of us spray a lot of antibac sprays quite freely in the home.
Especially, I think about a place like the shower.
Yes. A
Where
whole different, yeah.
you have these pretty, to get it clean, you need fairly heavy chemicals. Even my cleaner's like, your natural stuff doesn't work. I need this heavy duty stuff. But then I think about it, like, next thing I'm going in the shower, putting on hot, steamy water, and I'm just breathing all this in.
Yeah. So that's exactly true. And so a hot shower presents like two things. It presents like exactly what you just said, like a cloud of the chemicals you've cleaned with, but also any of the chemicals that are in your water that you want to avoid breathing in. When it's in a hot shower, you'll breathe that in. So there's two things, and ventilating your bathrooms is super important. Just keep the window open, like all the time. And if you're after your cleaner's been, like run the shower hot for a bit before you shower. Like let that happen before you're in it. So where possible, do use more natural cleaning products. But of course, where needed, like use what you need to, but just ventilate really well. And then the other thing to really think about is buying more plants. So peace lilies, the spider plants. There's lots of plants that are shown to help improve air quality. So they're lovely. Have them in your home. Look after them. And if you can, HEPA filters work super well at reducing pretty much 99.9% of particulate matter. So you're removing a lot of what we've just spoken about with a HEPA filter. And if you can get one for your home, it's worth having one in the room you spend the most time in. So that's the one that you'll be breathing in most of the day. Or if you have children and perhaps one of them is more prone to asthma or to a viral wheeze, perhaps in their bedroom, so that when they're sleeping, the air is as clean as possible for them. And similarly, hoovers with HEPA filters in them do a really good job of removing some of this matter from your carpets when you're hoovering and stuff without putting it back into the air.
Yeah. Is there a certain thing to look into? Because that's one thing that I have been interested in is a filter in the bedroom. When you say a room where you spend most of your time in, I think of the bedroom because we sleep hopefully a lot. And is one brand better than another, or is there certain things that we look into for those filters?
So they're called HEPA, H-E-P-A. A HEPA filter is a filter. It's not a brand. It's a type of filter that removes over 99% of particulate matter. So there's lots of different brands that do this, and it's just worth finding the ones that have the HEPA filter in them, basically. So that's another thing you can do. And so for the air biome, if you're having, for example, friends over for dinner, if you're having Christmas parties, ventilate after you've had lots of people around. Because when you have lots of guests, of course, the likelihood that they may have a pathogen that maybe they don't have symptoms for, that then can linger in your home is higher. So if you don't want to catch that cold or that flu, make sure you ventilate your home when you have guests.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
So which next sense should we cover?
Oh gosh.
Let's do sound. We're doing a lot of sound. Ears.
Okay, sound is good. So sound is super interesting. Sound is it's a sense of the senses is like one that isn't essential for life, but plays a really big role in memories. So how our memories are encoded, actually the sound neurons have they do a lot for this. So a lot of the research that showcase this really beautifully is in Alzheimer's and dementia. So where you have patients that have very severe Alzheimer's, they're not really connecting with the outside world. They don't have recognition anymore. When they hear certain songs or certain melodies, they will suddenly remember the words, they'll sing. So the sound cortex in our brain plays a really pivotal role in memory keeping. Which is fascinating. Now, the other thing we also know is that the way that we experience sound helps to regulate our stress response. So if, for example, you're exposed to like very loud stressful sounds a lot, it actually does influence your HPA axis, which is the axis that's responsible for the stress response. So you can put your body into a stress response if you're exposed to abrasive, repetitive, continuous noise that's actually, and you can feel it, right? You've been in a situation where there's like a sound that's really stressful, for example, like a fire alarm or something that's really stressful. It does actually impact our physiology. On the flip side of that, there's some really beautiful sounds, melodies. I mean, there's lots of research, for example, on classical music and how that influences the like brain waves, literally how the brain is working, and in children, how it influences like brain development even. So exposing children, young children to classical music, like regularly in early life, actually helps to change the way their brain forms, and they, for example, tend to be better at languages. So there's lots of really interesting science around how music plays a role. There's also interesting research on specific sound waves and how they influence our health. You probably have heard of different frequencies that are used for meditation, for example, or for mindfulness, theta waves, alpha waves, beta waves. And there's some interesting teams around the world that are using this in medical practice now. So, for example, in the use of psilocybin as medicine, in therapy, you can help to shape the experience by giving the participants different types of brain waves. So it's really cool how you can see that sound helps to shape our psyche. It helps to shape the memories we form, and it literally changes the way the brain communicates and experiences a piece of information, some learning, or an interaction. I don't know about you, Alex, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I can remember all the lyrics from like so many songs from 2005.
Really?
Yeah, do you not have that?
No, I don't have
Oh,
it.
I really do.
My
So
daughter
like,
does.
oh, does she? So I think it's really funny to see how just music has this very specific role in the way that our brains encode memory. So practical tips for sound and music are to try and reduce your exposure to harmful sounds. If you are exposed to harmful sounds or to very loud sounds, it's worth investing in good earplugs. So this is something that's become much more mainstream nowadays. If you're going to a festival, or if you're going clubbing, or if you're all these things that do have, and the music can be great, but if it's extremely loud, it's worth actually investing in protecting your hearing. What's really a thing that's really important is that hearing loss is associated with increased rates of dementia, or a faster timeline. So if you have hearing, when you stop being able to hear, it rapidly accelerates removal from society. So you're less able to communicate, you're less able to participate in meaningful conversation with your loved ones, and that really impacts your brain health. So the latest Lancet report on Alzheimer's and dementia really pinpointed hearing loss and getting screened for hearing loss as a major way to prevent dementia. So really important. So yeah, protect your ears. Give the babies little muff things. Wear your earplugs if you're going to a really loud thing, and then find music that moves you and that you can feel helps you to calm, like your nervous system is calming with it, and listen to that music. Like play it in the office or play it in the kitchen. We won't touch on it. It's in the book, but dancing and moving to music is actually humanity forever. Like we've always done this, and you can see in lots of tribal populations and hunter-gatherer populations, this is a major part of life. And there's some really interesting research on how movement with music can transform lives. One of the diseases that it's had incredible impact on is Parkinson's disease. So patients who have Parkinson's can really slow the progression of the disease, improve mental health with dancing. So yeah, music is great.
Yeah.
So listen to music you love, protect your ears, get your hair, if you're over the age of 50, get your hearing tested. Make sure that you don't need hearing aids. If you need them, please wear them. It's going to really protect your mental health and your brain health as well. And the other thing I would say is, like, when we think about noise pollution where you live, what can you do to help mitigate that? How can you try to minimize the noise pollution that might be damaging your health? There is actually quite a lot of research that, for example, the noise of airplanes, so living very close to airports, and the noise pollution can be disruptive for health. So just again, think about elements that you can use if it's an earplug that's protecting your hearing, or if you're going to move, somewhere that has less noise, background noise all the time, if you can. And then, of course, there's more expensive options such as insulating your home from sound and things like
Wow. I think you're bringing so many things to my attention, even in the way we sometimes value certain things in life, even where the home is. I've become very aware of the noise pollution. Um, I lived actually in a flat that was just around the corner from where we are now. It was facing a different direction away from this road, which we're close to.
Yeah.
And then this beautiful, super beautiful flat came up. So I'm like, oh, I want to get this bigger, better, beautiful flat. And then like all the bedrooms are facing the trees and the garden. This is gonna be so great. But the small but important part that I missed is that it's actually facing a more busier road.
Right.
And the quality of my well-being, I'm fairly aware like of these things, has drastically declined. So even though I'm having these more beautiful views, my previous bedrooms were facing in our courtyard.
Yeah.
However, it was quiet. It was not a lot of light. However, it was perfect for sleep.
Yeah, perfect for sleeping. It was just
And
about it
now I'm
sounds like
like,
it.
now because everyone like, I want more light. And now I'm like, I don't care about light. I just want to sleep and I just want it to be quiet. I want to be able to open the windows and have all that fresh air in.
Yeah.
So everything that you mentioned, even when looking or investing into a home or a place to live, is so important. That's what I think this conversation that we're having now will make people aware of, especially when you're considering making an investment of your home.
Yeah.
Consider of, are you living above airplanes or electric grids maybe, or a busy road, or not close to greenery. All these things are so important for our well-being. So it's great that you raise these topics.
Yeah, thank you. I think so too, because I think you're so right at the moment. When you think about where you're going to move to, it's often like proximity to your favorite places, or it's like proximity to, just a beautiful view, and we haven't really thought about how these other exposures actually influence our health. Or some people obviously do. Like, as I said, we did. It was a hard decision to move further out of the centre of town, central London, knowing that it would take us longer to get where we need to go and all these things. Like, it was we had to decide, do we make this move so that we can be closer to green space, have cleaner air, less noise pollution? And like, ultimately for us, it was the right decision. But it's nice to see that. I hope people think about that more when they think about where they're going to live or where they're going to, for example, put their children in school. An amazing amount of schools in London are on major roads. An amazing amount of schools in London are on major roads with entirely concrete playgrounds, with just pavement, no green space. And this is not to say you might not have a choice of, you might not, London you tend to have a couple of choices of schools. You might not have that, but can you write to your head teacher and say, actually, can we introduce like a little vegetable patch in the garden, so in the school, so they can like at least have contact with natural environment? So this leads me nicely onto, I'll tell you of the touch one. Okay. So for touch, there's so much. So touch and taste have the most, because there's
My
just
favorite.
so much to talk.
Touch and taste is
Touch
my
and
favorite.
taste. So like touch, I'm going to give you an example of the role that touching soil and touching plants has in our health. So there's this really cute, not cute, it's a good study, a randomized control trial where they had adults who were about to get their pneumococcal vaccine. So they were preparing to have vaccination. Just before the vaccination, the scientists said, okay, you guys in this arm, you're going to every day grab some soil, some really healthy soil that's got like worms, it's really bioactive soil, it's really alive, right? You're going to just rinse, you're just going to rub it on your hands 3 times a day for a few minutes. That was the intervention, right? Just rub soil, touch it, then you can wash your hands and carry on with your day. The control group did nothing. They just carried on with their normal day. I think they had them like rub some cream in their hands just to replicate the motion and the 3 times a day just as a control. And they then gave both groups the pneumococcal vaccine. And the group who had the soil intervention had a much better response, had the immune system was able to create more antibodies, and essentially had like more success to protect themselves against pneumococcal infection from just rubbing their hands with soil 3 times a day. So I think what we often forget is that everything we touch, like, I want to start this by saying our skin is incredibly effective as a barrier. So it's not as simple, like when you put something on your skin, it doesn't just cross. We'd all be dead if that was the case. The skin is an incredible barrier. But everything we touch, a lot of the chemicals we touch, a lot of the things we touch do have a direct impact on the skin biome. So the population of microbes that live all over our skin are part of that barrier system, but they also communicate with our immune system. They also send signals to the rest of the body. And when we touch soil, for example, coming into touch with the soil biome influences our skin biome. And then you see, what's really interesting is that you see certain microbes are found in the soil, are found on our skin, and are found in our gut. So there's this like idea that we are one organism with the environment. We literally share microbes and share information across the way. So it's really important to think about it that way. And so soils are like a positive example. There's dozens of studies and meta-analyses that show that people who garden regularly live longer without disease, have better immune systems, less allergies, all of these, less autoimmune conditions. So gardening, 10 out of 10 hobby, if you can.
Yeah.
And
Biohack.
it's no, it is. It's a
Yeah.
real biohack, like a proper one.
Yeah, exactly.
None of the other stuff. You don't need an ozone therapy box. Just go do some gardening.
Exactly.
The other thing that's really important is that on the flip side of that, if you come into contact regularly with substances that are harmful with your skin, it's also not good. So the really obvious example here is perfumed lotions, right? So you've had your hot shower, you get out of your hot shower, your skin pores are wide open, there is blood flowing to the surface of your skin because it's hot. And then you spray some deodorant, and then you grab some like deliciously smelling lotion and you spread it all over your body. Now, unfortunately, not all brands, right? But most brands use essentially products from the petrochemical industry to create parfums, fragrances. And when you put these on your body, they have an effect. Now, most worryingly, they could have endocrine disrupting effects. So EDCs are endocrine disrupting chemicals. And we really want to reduce the exposure to those, especially if you're pregnant or if you're like a young person. So if you're a child or a teenager, the people that have the most exposure to these that tend to have different health outcomes. They tend to hit puberty earlier. There is an increased rate of infertility in boys. So it's really important that we're aware of the fact that these body care products, there's no regulation against these chemicals at the moment. I think it's definitely changing. And again, this is why I'm really hopeful. More and more brands are using natural-based products that don't contain these chemicals. And classic things to look out for example, are things like phthalates, right? So we don't want phthalates to come into contact with our skin every single day. So your skin is this brilliant barrier. It works super well, but we have to be mindful what we put on it, because actually it plays a role that's super important for our immune system and for our development and our hormonal health. So how can we improve it? Garden. So gardening is generally one of the hacks. And whether that doesn't mean like ridiculous gardening, it might mean that you have a few potted plants that you look after and that you really spend time with essentially in your home. It might be that you get some really lovely herbs and you grow them so it doesn't have to be really high effort, but the more you do, the more you'll get the benefit of spending time outside as well and doing something you love. There's something very sort of fulfilling about planting a seed, watching it grow, and seeing your garden change and seeing the seasons through the garden as well. So I think gardening is a really good one. Try to buy products, soaps, body washes, deodorants that are free of these chemicals, so that don't contain anything. Unfortunately, anything that says parfum on it tends to contain these plastics. So there are lots of lovely brands that now do this. And also consider, like, do you have to wear perfume every day? For some people, it's like part of their personality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this is my perfume. I wear it. Okay. So if you're someone who loves to wear perfume, then try not to spray it directly onto your skin. Consider like spraying it in a ventilated room onto your clothes and then wearing those, or Just, yeah, not directly onto your skin, basically. And if you really love to wear something that smells delicious, you can buy a really lovely base oil and then add some essential oil to it, or buy pre-mixed ones. Make sure that there's a good balance. Too much essential oil is irritant to the skin, basically. So you can make your own, or you can get some that are literally just a lovely sort of coconut oil with some essential oils in it that smell good.
How about, for women,
Yeah,
a lot of makeup products, a lot
yes,
of, lips, eyes, and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
We as men, we're fairly simple when it comes to that.
yeah,
However, how do women prevent from putting a lot of chemicals, especially very close to their
exactly. And every
nose,
day.
their
Yeah.
mouth, their eyes, which are very, I feel, absorbent?
Yes. So this is a really good point. And actually, there was a study that looked at how much plastic women ate from lipstick.
Wow.
It was a lot. I can't remember the exact amount, but so two things, right? Again, there are some brands and some products that create makeup that have less of these potentially harmful chemicals. There's a really worrying trend right now of very young girls wearing a lot of makeup. So when they're still in this sensitive phase where their hormones are changing, like highly recommend that we don't encourage our teens and tweens, so kids,
Yeah, my
daughters
daughter.
your age,
Yeah, when
yeah,
she looks at her mom, and she's like, "I want to do also put eye
yeah,
mascara and lipstick and things like
yeah.
that."
But it's worse when they see children their own age, and they're like, well,
Mm.
my friend is allowed to wear foundation, and she wears like I don't know, whatever, yeah, mascara. She's wearing lipstick, and it's really hard to say, yeah, but not you. But we have to sort of understand that it poses health risks. So we should not encourage that behavior, and we should. It's quite being strict about some things. Like this is one of the things where it's like smartphone use, putting things on your skin. Like let's try and avoid those two. Makeup is an issue. Lots of brands are moving to more natural ingredients in the makeup as well. And also, I would say like, do we need to wear that much makeup? Like, just try to have days where you don't wear it at all.
Yeah.
Especially if I don't know. I've personally started wearing a lot less makeup as I get older, which may be counterintuitive, but that's exactly what's happening. And
Yeah.
so, and I found it super liberating. I'm like, it's my face.
Exactly.
This is what
Yeah.
I look like, and I'm not trying to contour it to be different. It's and my skin health has noticeably improved. I feel that it's just something that we need to start moving towards. I think a lot of people feel that makeup is a form of self-expression, and I completely respect that. But we just need to be mindful that it's still something that's coming into contact with your face all day, and especially if you're exposed to warmer climes, or like you're going into heated settings, like you will be absorbing through your skin and eating your lipstick. So
Yeah. So, which moves us to taste.
to taste, exactly, and not lipstick is not. So
Don't eat lipstick.
don't lipstick. So in the taste chapter, I talk about a lot of things, especially because it touches on food, of course. One of the most okay, let me pick one or two, but one of the most fascinating parts of taste is and what we ingest essentially is xenobiotics. So xenobiotics is this new class of chemicals and additives that we just didn't evolve with, but that are now part of our food environment. So we ingest them all the time, and as scientists, we don't know what they're doing. So I gave a presentation at the Food Standards Agency with the Committee on Toxicity, and they wanted to hear a perspective on how food additives might be influencing our health, specifically through the lens of the gut microbiome. And it was I wasn't popular in that room, but it was a very interesting meeting because these brilliant scientists are there, and they're very talented in what they do, and they're there to assess, you know, additives that are put into food, making sure they're safe before they're allowed to be added, reviewing things that might have changed. But what we are seeing now is that it's the cocktail effect of these xenobiotics. That's what we think is having such detrimental impact, certainly on the gut microbiome, on gut health, but also more widely on the population's health, right? So we're seeing the effects of the foods that that we're eating now, the drinks that we're drinking now. They have so many chemicals in them that did not exist
Mm.
like 80 years ago. They didn't exist. And so our bodies are like, what do we do with this compound? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always bad. But for a very long time, we thought that they were inert. So the way that scientists do this is they sort of say, okay, you've eaten this much aspartame. We've taken your blood. There's not that much aspartame. It must be doing nothing. And of course, the science has evolved. And we now know that no, it doesn't do nothing. The gut microbiome breaks them down. And in the meantime, the liver has had to deal with it and break it down. So actually, there's these xenobiotics touch our health in ways that we might understand a fair amount at individual level, but we're only just starting to understand what happens when you combine them. And like Alex, you don't need me to tell you that these food products have like dozens of these additives in each food product. And often, right? Some of them don't, but a lot of them. And people are drinking and eating multiple of these a day, every day. So it's not a one-time exposure to one additive. It's multiple exposures to multiple additives that then they have interactions with each other. So it's like any chemistry lesson. You know, when you add things together, they react. And when you add different things together, they react. And they react in ways that might be unexpected. So xenobiotics is something I touched on in the book, and how they also influence our perception of taste. So what's happening to our perception of taste when we have flavors that would never exist in nature in some foods? And we know that if you have something like a really sweet, tasty soda, which has got tropical mango and cherry flavor, and then you go to eating an apple, your brain perceives the apple as being quite dull, right? So it changes the way we experience natural flavors when we have overexposure to these xenobiotics. So there's the sort of cocktail effect angle, also like how it alters our perception of taste, which is sad, right? Because food is delicious. And then the other thing that I cover in there as well, so I cover several topics for each sense, but the other one that I love is this idea that actually our sense of the flavor and our sense of taste can actually help us to identify the most nutritionally dense foods. So there's no metric, there's no way of measuring nutrient density in food, which I think is quite interesting. We can measure calories, we can measure protein, fats, carbohydrates, fiber, we can measure vitamins and minerals. We can measure polyphenols, which are bioactive compounds which give intense flavor and that give color. So we can measure bioactive compounds like polyphenols that give mostly plants, all plants actually, their intense colors and flavors. But there's no way of understanding nutrient density and combining all these except for flavor. So if you eat a strawberry that's been grown hydroponically in December in the UK, eat that. And then you eat a strawberry that's been grown in a really lovely, healthy soil in May in the UK, completely different flavor. They're both strawberries. They both probably have the same amount of fiber. Their macronutrient content, maybe their micronutrient content will be slightly different. Certainly for the hydroponic strawberry, there'll be less variety of minerals. But in terms of nutrient density and quality overall, like that soil-grown seasonal strawberry trumps the hydroponic strawberry all day. And we think that flavor holds the key to help humans reconnect with the quality of their food, the quality and how it's been grown. Because for us to really be able to create a sustainable food system, we need to be able to grow food in a way that respects the environment. Otherwise, it's not going to go well.
I'm so big on this topic.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shops in London, and it is super expensive.
Yeah.
Natura.
Natura, yeah. I'm a big fan.
And the whole ethos of the shop is flavor to the core.
Exactly.
And they're one of the first, as you're educating us right now in regards to the importance of flavor, that was the first time I heard the importance of flavor, and I would taste the difference.
Yeah.
You know, they try to source food more seasonally from certain growers, around, you know, mostly local and some in Europe.
Yeah.
However, especially coming from North America and Canada, where a lot of foods just don't have flavor.
Yeah.
And when I moved here and I started eating, and I love the season of, you know, fruit here in the summer and vegetables, you can taste the difference
Yeah.
day and night.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, to your point that you're communicating, the importance of actually being more aware of the flavor of your foods. And yes, sometimes this will cost you more. However, maybe instead of, I would rather eat one peach
Yeah.
instead of 5 peaches that are like whatever mediocre, same with strawberries. I tend to really value and see that um, these growers and these type of shops that bring us more to these, type of flavors are so important.
Yes. Franco is amazing. His book is brilliant as well. And what they've done, so it's interesting because they come from like the food systems perspective. They set up their own food chain for Natura so that it could work, which is amazing. But when you also look at like people who work in soil health and agriculture, they say the same thing. It's like the best way to understand how this food has been grown, flavor is the best measure. So from different angles, you're getting the same message of like, it's really hard to measure the food's nutrient density. If anyone can do it, Professor Sarah Berry can do it. Like she's a chief scientist at Zoe. She's a genius when it comes to like cracking these codes of how we can move nutrition forward. I wonder if I'm going to ask her if she can crack this one. But essentially, for now, we know that flavor and how we've evolved to understand taste and how we've evolved to be able to read the flavor codes of foods with evolution is actually one of the best ways that we can eat the foods that are good for us. So another good example of this is like if you suddenly really fancy something, you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to eat some tomatoes right now, or like, oh, I really can't wait to have pumpkin. Like I'm really looking forward to it. There's something about the flavor of that food that your body is, so we think your gut microbes actually have a role to play in this. The gut microbes can send signals through the vagus nerve to your brain to request specific foods. Because gut microbes have very individual taste preferences. So they like specific fibers or specific bioactive compounds that are their favorite, and they will literally ask for more.
What about ice cream now?
Well, no. So that's a good question because ice cream, right, there are some microbes in your gut that love ice cream. And if they're feeling a bit starved, they'll be like, hey, we need more ice cream.
Send some chocolate.
But this is why the foods you eat, right, then kind of dictate the foods you crave. Because the more you feed the gut microbes that eat those foods, the more they're like, yeah, bring us some more so we can get even bigger and have like an even. So this is exactly right.
There's a funny
ice cream.
There's a funny anecdote like this in Russian. It said, "How do you get the worm out of your stomach?" It's just an anecdote. But they said, "Okay, I have a thing to do." So you feed, you eat every day, say bread and some cacao.
Okay.
So some chocolate, and you feed it every day consistently. And then one day you stop to not have chocolate or cacao. Then the worm's gonna come out and say, "Where's my chocolate?"
Yeah, basically this.
Well, basically,
but your gut microbes, exactly. So we know that happens, by the way. And so this is also why it's important to help. You can train yourself to enjoy flavors from healthier foods. And once you start doing that, so when you start buying Natura, it's hard to go back to not.
It's day and night.
And it's interesting because like obviously we're super lucky that we can do that. But what's really interesting is that over the past 3 or 4 decades, the proportion of income that we spend on food has drastically decreased. So households in the 50s and 60s, definitely not me. Paul is like, are you okay? Do you, I'm like, don't get me a handbag, just more delicious food.
Yeah.
So literally in the 50s and 60s, as much as 25% of average household income was spent on food, groceries. Now it's like 10% or below. People don't value purchasing food in the same way that they used to. Of course, that's because there is so much convenient, processed, cheap food available that it's devalued how much we should be spending on food. I think that's actually really sad.
It's
and
really
we should
sad.
be making healthier foods way more affordable. But at the same time, we should really be empowering people to say, actually, let's make sure that you have more of your exposable income is able to be spent on healthy, nutritious food. Because, I mean, that would be transformative and it will taste delicious. So for that, how do we think about powering our flavor to improve our health? It's just really learning to enjoy foods eating more slowly, more mindfully, enjoying these flavors. Also, to the point of price, experiment with delicious flavorful foods that are frozen, tinned, jarred, that are they don't have to be like the freshest things ever. You can enjoy different flavors in a way that's more affordable and that fits within your budget as well. Try to grow your own fruit, grow your own herbs, and just see
Mm.
how that basil tastes or that rosemary, and introduce those to your cooking. So adding mixed spices is a really good way to elevate the flavor profile of your meals, which will also help you enjoy some more of those healthy foods.
Federica, thank you so much. We're gonna need a part two. This is really just an introduction to many of the topics that we wanted to discuss today.
Yeah, we had like a very long list. Alex, this is the first time that I've spoken about my book, so you've got the world preview right now.
Amazing. World preview. Go get the book. When's it out? When's the book out?
Well, hopefully next, so next year, so like halfway through next year, possibly.
Oh,
We
wow.
haven't decided.
Okay,
We haven't
so
even decided publication
oh
date.
wow. I thought okay, this is
No,
we
no.
get exclusive on intelligent change. We're getting before it's out. However, we'll probably maybe by the time it's closer out, we can
Okay.
have an either longer sit down and chat
Yeah,
in the beautiful summer weather, enjoying some nice fruit
that would be great. Yes.
and flavor. So that'll be really great. But thank you so much for coming here today. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for having me. It's
you
been
and
such
your
a pleasure.
time. It's incredible. I have so many takeaways today.
Thanks, Alex.